Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the IGS workshop on ArcGIS Online. This is always a fun workshop where we really get people interested and excited about using the ArcGIS Online framework, developing web apps and web maps. Hopefully, you'll get a lot out of this workshop. So real quick, just to describe who we are and who we work with. The IGS team who are presenting this workshop today work for this part of the organization, part of the university called University of California Ag and Natural Resources Division. We are the extension branch of the University of California. We take research developed at the campuses and get it out to the general public. You all probably know us by many other names. We are Cooperative Extension. We are Master Gardeners, 4-H, California Naturalists, CalFresh, IPM, Integrated Pest Management, and a bunch of other programs. And IGIS is one of those programs. That's who we are. And I just want to look at the map here on the right-hand side. This really shows where we work around the state. We have people at almost every campus in the University of California system. We have advisors as well as staff in every county except for Alpine County. And then we have research extension centers, which are pieces of property set aside for either natural resource research or agricultural research around the state as well. So we have a really broad base of people scattered throughout the state of California, providing support to everyday Californians. We are a really strong group of people, as you can see from the tagline at the very top. We are connecting the power of UC research with local communities to improve the lives of Californians. That's what we want to do. And IGIS, as part of that, is we provide GIS and geospatial tools to the UCANR network of staff and academics. And we also provide trainings to anyone who wants to come, such as yourselves. And we provide other GIS services to some local, county, and state agencies as well. If you want to know more about IGIS, you can go to our website, which you see here in the lower right corner at igis.ucanr.edu. So who are we specifically at IGIS? There's a small core group of people. There's myself, Shane Fire. I'm based in Mendocino County at the Hopland Research Extension Center. My role is I am the GIS manager for everything GIS in the group, and I have a core group of people who I work with that we create web applications and other applications that use geospatial tools. And as you can tell, I'm giving the introductory presentation today. Then you're going to meet Sean Hogan, who's already spoke a little bit in the beginning here. Sean is one of our academics, one of our academic coordinators. His specialty is remote sensing and drone technologies and GIS. So he'll be talking about the GIS and the workshop today and presenting the workshop. And then we have a suite of other people online today to help and answer questions. That is going to, and you heard from Andy Lyons a second ago. Andy Lyons is on, eventually Genoa Starr, Ben Satzman, and Robert Johnson. They are all here today behind the scenes to answer your questions. Dr. Maggie Kelly on the far right is the director of our team. She is not here today, but she hopes our workshop and everything goes well today. So what I'd like to do real quick here is just kind of review who we are. So what I would like you to do, actually who you are, not we, if you can go to the chat window and put in your name, what you hope to learn from today's workshop, and what's your experience with ArcGIS Online. So if you could just take a few minutes, put those things in, and we can see how comfortable you are. I will tell you, for the most part, I'm pretty comfortable in ArcGIS Online, but it really depends on the day and the task I'm trying to do. And I will go back to the slideshow because that is not looking good. But please put your information in the window. Sean, I can't get to the chat or show it at the same time. If you can just let me know when we're not getting any more responses.
All right, I'll monitor that.
Thank you.
I think that's about good.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Well, mostly there's a couple ones, but some threes and so mostly us.
Understood, understood. So Sean, from what you're seeing in terms of what people are hoping to get out of the workshop, do you think that we're going to cover most of those topics?
Yes, yeah. So the main idea is to get the basics in.
Okay, okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is what we're going to go through today. This is going to be the outline for the workshop today. So we've already done introductions. We're going to go through introductions to WebGIS. What is WebGIS in the Esri ecosystem? And that's called ArcGIS Online. Why we should use ArcGIS Online, some core concepts of web mapping and web apps and ArcGIS Online, as well as some basic design considerations. And then Sean is going to go jump into the workshop and he's going to go over an overview of the different menu options and functions, introductions to the apps associated with ArcGIS Online, and that list is getting bigger and bigger. Adding data and creating how to add data and create web maps, basic data analysis functions, and I'll add that there are more and more functions being added every day in terms of ArcGIS Online and data analysis. He's going to go through stylizing and symbolizing your web map's appearance, how to publish a web map application, and then how to share the web map and or web mapping application inside of your existing web page or web framework using an iframe. So really, some really basic but core items when working with ArcGIS Online and the tools they can provide. So in the Esri world, we talk about web maps and web apps. I'll describe them in a second, but here's just a quick handful of different web maps and web apps. On the far left here, you see a really basic, it's the old map viewer, which still exists, but I anticipate this being phased out eventually here since they have a newer version of the web map viewer. And the new version is what Sean is going to be teaching on today. But we have the web maps, we have web apps. Those could be things that work specifically on mobile devices or other web devices. We also have things like story maps, which you see here in the middle. We have also apps, which are like the Fire Perimeter web app that was built with, I believe, the basic map viewer in the upper right. And then we have another web app called Dashboards. And within the ArcGIS Online system, you can create dashboards, such as the one that many of you are probably familiar with here from the COVID-19 tracking app put out by Johns Hopkins University. These all use ArcGIS Online web maps and web apps, and they're web apps. So please dig into these. They are quite fun, and there are many, many options, and Sean's going to show you a few. So what is the difference between a web map and a web app? I like to think of there being that web maps are almost like a Word document. It's where you compose your map, you change the styling, you make it look exactly how you want. And then the web app is almost like a PDF. You limit what people can do. You can't edit it, but you can give them different functionality, and you can really tailor that and make it look really nice. But to get more specific, web maps, they're basic online web maps with custom symbology. So it's a map background with layers on top of it, and you can change and color the points, lines, and polygons, or the raster data that it's showing. You can configure other options such as labels, infographics, pop-ups, and other widgets that you want to work with and within that web map. And you can also do some basic analysis. So there is some analysis capabilities. These are really not tailored for sharing with the general public or giving to someone and unless they really know what they're working on and dealing with. And also sometimes you may not want to give all the capabilities of a web map to every user. So there's pros and cons to web maps. Web applications are basically web maps inside of a custom container. The nice thing about web applications is you can make them look really nice. You can create custom titles, you can brand them with your organization's branding, colors, fonts, logos, whatever. You can also go in and change and play with layout options and how they're really going to look. With labeling, you can have infographics that pull data directly from the maps. You can have custom pop-ups, a bunch of custom charts, all these different things built into the web application. And good examples of web applications that you will run into with ArcGIS Online is their story maps, which some of you may have heard of or worked on. And we do a training called Intro to Story Maps, which talks all about story maps. There's dashboards such as the John Hopkins example. And then there's just other smartphone apps that you can get, Survey 123, field maps, and there are a list of those. So there are applications that you can use on mobile devices, PCs, Macs, and everything else. And really, these web apps often resemble standalone web pages. So I look at, once again, web maps are where you compose the map. Web applications are where you share and interact with that web map in a nice container that looks like a web page. So let's talk a little more about just ArcGIS Online in general. You will often hear people refer to as AGOL, so ArcGIS Online. Before ArcGIS Online, GIS truly was in the realm of GIS professionals such as myself and my colleagues. If you wanted custom maps, if you wanted anything, you had to come talk to a GIS professional. They're the ones who could do the analysis, they could create the map, they could create the PDF of the map, and it was all in the hands of us. And it was really specialized software on desktop computers. And in most situations on PC computers. That's changed a little bit in more recent years. You have QGIS that work on Macs, that work on Linux, and that work on Windows. But in general, GIS was the realm of GIS of Windows and sometimes Linux. After the release of AGOL in 2012, GIS could basically be used by anyone because GIS became accessible in the browser. But early on in 2012, when they first came out, it was really just a matter of you could bring some layers together, symbolize them, and view them. There really wasn't analysis capabilities. You couldn't do a lot of the basic things you could do in the web desktop GIS. But that has changed, and that has changed considerably in the last almost decade and a half. So why would you use ArcGIS Online, you ask? You might want to create web maps and web apps. You may want to link to a bunch of applications like field maps, story map, and dashboards. You may want to perform simple GIS analysis. And you notice here it says, but there's more advanced stuff is on the way. That is true. Since we've been given this workshop now for, it's probably been 4 or 5 years, we have seen tremendous leaps in terms of analytical capabilities available within ArcGIS Online. Sean's going to go over a little bit of that today and just let me show you how to get to it. And it's really quite powerful. One other nice thing is you can get access to loads of data. There's this behind ArcGIS Online, there is an entire cloud platform that stores and shares data on ArcGIS Online. But then there's also another platform that Esri puts out that's freely available to everyone called the Living Atlas. So ArcGIS Online can tap into that Living Atlas as well as its own data structures and pull all those data into a map and make it so it's accessible to everyone. Up until ArcGIS Online, a lot of places in the US, even around the world, were data poor. Things are, because it was really hard to find data, you had to digitize it, create it yourself, and then you had that data siloed on your computer or within your organization. ArcGIS Online has made that data available to everyone. It's a really powerful system. One thing nice about ArcGIS Online is it's fast, it's intuitive, it's really easy to use, and it's browser-based. So if you have a browser, whether it be Edge, Safari, Firefox, Google, just to name the main ones, it works in those applications. You don't need something special, any special desktop software or anything. Why else would you use ArcGIS Online? It's the tight integration that it provides. There's the data, there's the design, and then there's to develop. What I mean by data, as I mentioned, you have the Living Atlas. You can bring in your own data from your computer. You can bring in your own data from your own servers. You can use CSV files. You can import photos. There's a bunch of different things you can do. You can also build data collection apps and get data from your citizen scientists or from your other people you work with. And then once you have that data, you can bring it into the middle hexagon here in web maps and you can bring that data in, and you can style it, make it look really nice. And then you can create a web app and share it with everyone. Not only can you create a web app and story map and everything else without coding, which I did not mention, you can actually build these things without having to actually do coding of JavaScript or anything else. They just work out from within the ArcGIS Online environment, or you can develop native apps that work on phones like Android, iOS, and other things. So there's this entire continuum of things you can do with ArcGIS Online. And today we are going to touch on data, we're going to touch on web maps, and we're going to touch on web apps. We're not going to get into the development side of this at all, except for to show you how to use web apps. So I've been saying how really powerful and how nice ArcGIS Online is and how much it can do and what you can do with it. But there are some things that it does not do well. Principal among them is cartography and design are better in the desktop software. I'll tell you, if I want to make a really pretty map, I don't do that in ArcGIS Online. I do that in ArcGIS Pro, where I have really fine control of every piece of the software. So I can get it to look exactly how I want. Also in ArcGIS Pro, I have control of the projection that the data are being presented in. And there are hundreds and hundreds of projections, but the principal projection that you get to use in ArcGIS Online is a web Mercator. It's one projection, covers the whole world, and there are trade-offs to how it displays distance and areas. But that's the case with any projection. But ArcGIS Online does not handle other projections well. We also mentioned that it does not do advanced analysis, but we say it's more is on its way. There is image processing now. There is spatial modeling you can do with ArcGIS Online, and there's also a lot of vector work you can do. And there is now reproducibility and coding you can do in ArcGIS Online. So all these things, they're getting better, and they're constantly building more things in. So what is the pro and con between ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro? Let's quickly go through that. ArcGIS Online strengths are you can create web maps and web apps without any coding. It's really easy to do. You have links to a load of different applications, and I keep mentioning story maps, dashboards, and then there are other instant apps and things like that. You can do simple analysis. It's really fast. It's intuitive. It's browser based. You don't need anything special. You don't need to have a desktop for it. You can use a phone, tablet, whatever you want. Both these systems, whether it be AGOL or ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Pro, they all have access to loads of data. The strengths of ArcGIS Online, just in review, of ArcGIS Pro in review, is much finer control of cartography, projection control, advanced analysis, and reproducibility in coding using Python. One thing to note about one of the cons of ArcGIS Pro is it requires to do some of these things. ArcGIS Pro requires an organizational license and a desktop computer. And when we say desktop computer, we don't mean like a Mac or a Linux or a Chromebook. We mean a 64-bit Windows operating system, a Windows 10, Windows 11, to use ArcGIS Pro. So you are limited in some ways on what you can do with Pro. And the con is definitely the need for a Windows PC. One thing, though, even though I say there's pros and cons, is ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro are tightly integrated. So you can create web maps, you can author web maps and style them and push them up to ArcGIS Online. You can also bring those web maps down from ArcGIS Online and use them and modify the data in ArcGIS Pro and save those results back up to ArcGIS Online. So there's a lot of integration back and forth. And also ArcGIS Pro can also tap into the data stored in ArcGIS Online as well as the data stored on the Living Atlas. So Esri has really tried to make sure these two programs work hand in hand, and for the most part, they have succeeded. Now we're just going to briefly, and I mean briefly, hit on the difference between local versus cloud formats in terms of data. It's something to keep in mind when you're working with local data and ArcGIS Online. So local data, when I say that, I'm thinking of geodatabases, shapefiles, grids or rasters, comma-separated value files, Excel files, so forth. So file-based data. You all have this on your computer. These data sets can be moved up to the cloud, and they can be used within ArcGIS Online. The caveat is when you move them up, they get turned into a different type of data. They get turned into cloud data. You can download it back off as local file formats if you want to, but they're stored as layers and feature and services. So when we're talking cloud data, we're talking about layers and services. And you will hear that as Sean goes through the presentation. So what we have is we have feature layers, which are vectors. We have image layers, which are rasters. We have scene layers, which get into voxels, which are three-dimensional grids, as well as elevation data and 3D models. We have elevation layers, such as literally your elevation of your land surfaces. And then we have vector tile layers, which are vector data that have been symbolized and formatted in a way that are really fast and responsive. And you can use them as base maps within your web maps and web apps. One thing to keep in mind when you're using ArcGIS Online, you're going to be creating web maps and web apps, and you may not want to share that with everybody. So within ArcGIS Online, they've come up with different levels of sharing. So your data can be shared in different ways. You have several options for sharing your data, and you really have to think about how you want to have the data shared. Do you have the rights to share that with everyone? Is it proprietary data that you have up on ArcGIS Online? Is it data that's sensitive that you shouldn't necessarily have out for the general public? So you really have to think about your sharing. And the options you have within ArcGIS Online, and I know Sean will cover this, is the level of sharing. You can share it with only yourself. So you can make it so no one else in your organization, no one else in ArcGIS Online can see it. That's the default to any layer, any web map, or any web map that you create. The default is only you have access to it. You can then share it with a group, and these are predefined groups that you set up or your administrator sets up within ArcGIS Online. And you can share your web apps, your web maps, or your data with the group and yourself, because you always have access to yours. And then no one else, unless they're part of that group, can see or get access to the data. So that's one level higher than yourself. Then you can share it, and this is what the example on the right, on the left shows you. You can share it with your organization. So in my case, if I share it with the organization, anyone within the UC Agriculture and Natural Resources who has a GIS account on ArcGIS Online could see my data, my web maps, and my web apps. So really, you have to weigh whether you want everyone to have that or not if you choose the sharing option. And then the fourth option is open to everyone. If you say open to everyone, it's public. Anyone can get access to it and can view it. They can't edit it, but they can get access and work with it unless you want them to edit it. And I should point out that if you have a web map and you have data in there that are not shared at the same level, so let's say you had some data that's only shared with you, and you put it in a web map and you say, make this web map accessible by everyone, ArcGIS Online is going to prompt you and say, do you want to update the sharing on X layer? It's only shared with you. And you have to either approve that or not approve that, and then they'll either be able to get access to the data or not. So it tries to prompt you and make sure you're sharing your data properly. So keep this in mind, and I do know Sean's going to talk about it. So real quick, here's a schematic of building web maps and apps within ArcGIS Online. And once again, we're going to return back to data, design, and develop. So here, the data is going to come from either ArcGIS Online, the Living Atlas, or ArcGIS Pro. You're going to push those data up to ArcGIS Online as web feature layers or another type of feature layer. You're going to bring that into a web map, whether it be the classic viewer or the new viewer. You're going to stylize the data, turn on pop-ups or not, save it, and then you're going to turn it into either a web app, whether it be created with Experience Builder, which I think Sean will hit on briefly. The old web app builder, I don't think it's even easy to get into, or it's hidden now. Or you could just use a story map or data map or dashboard to use those web maps. And then you can just share it out to either those within your organization, a group, or everyone. So going from data all the way through is a pretty easy workflow. And in the end, on the far right, you end up with people getting access to your data, interacting with it, and quite honestly, being happy, which is always nice. So keep in mind the basic workflow is you take your data, you design it, you develop your app, and then you publish it out to people. There's some quick design considerations for web maps. You want to think about who are your users, your audience, or your stakeholders. What is the objective of the map? And this is important because people often, especially with web maps, they want to throw everything on the map and then turn things on and off constantly. Try to avoid that. Try to keep it concise and to your objective and what your message is. So keep that in mind. What needs to be symbolized on the map? And how is it going to be symbolized? One thing to keep in mind is when we develop maps, and everyone should think about this when developing maps, especially symbolizing, think about color blindness. Keep in mind the different colors that you shouldn't be using, red, greens, for instance, just to really make sure that everyone can interact and get the most out of your maps. And when I mentioned before that people like to put everything on the map, decide what to include and what to leave out. Basically, what I say, I try to keep in mind when I'm developing a map is the minute you're describing the map and you say, and, so I'm creating a map of elevation and, pastures and this, each time you say and is almost really a new map. When it comes to web maps, you have a little bit of flexibility, but you don't want to give too much. And then also something to think about is ethical considerations of the map. What's the data you're putting out? Should you be putting it out? Is there any sensitivity to it and so forth? So these are really important things to think about when you're creating your map. And this works for web maps, but any map that you create. Logistical considerations for the web maps. Will the map data be dynamic or can it be static? If it's dynamic, you have to build it in a way that pulls from the dynamic data, which sometimes can be more complex. What kind of data do you need? And will it be hosted? Will it be on a server? Will it be an ArcGIS server? Or is it just going to be a CSV file that is dynamic? You're going to drop it on a map, map the data, and show it. Very different considerations. Is the web map going to be part of an existing website? That's important to think about. In terms of styling, choosing your fonts, all those type of things. So you got to keep that in mind. Do you need to support multiple platforms? Tablets, smartphones, etc. So you got to make sure that your symbology looks right, your fonts are easy to read, and ideally use the dev tools on your browser if you know where those are, and just see how they're going to look if you simulate a tablet or a smartphone. How does it look? Also, do you need support for offline access? Not all feature services have the ability to be used when there's not a cellular internet connection. So you got to keep that in mind when you're designing your data in your map. And that goes along with, do you need to collect field data using the applications? If so, make sure that your data can be taken offline. How much programming will be required is something to think about. But with ArcGIS Online, in general, there's very little to almost zero programming required, depending on how you do it. And then, as is always the case, how much are you willing to spend? There is a free version of ArcGIS Online. There's a non-free version of ArcGIS Online. And there are pros and cons, obviously, to each. But ArcGIS Online for organization and credits do cost money. So keep that in mind. If you want to know more about trainings and more of what we do, please go to our website at igis.ucnr.edu. One of the links you're going to see is going to be the training link. And if you go there, you'll see our most recent workshops. Right now, this is the last workshop that's officially on the schedule for the spring. We do have something called Drone Camp coming up June 14th, 24th through 28th. Sorry, it's not a misspelling. I put the wrong number in. And then we are going to be actively working on our fall schedule, and it should be coming soon. Also, I want to point out two other resources at the bottom of this page. If you have questions when you're done here and you have more things you want to know, we have something called office hours. And then we also have a data resources page on our website to get more information about different data sets and different resources that you can find. So with that, Sean, do you want to take a break now? How do you want to proceed?
No, you know what? I think what we'll do is I'll give a basic overview. It won't be a hands-on portion of the workshop. It'll just be kind of an overview, show and tell where the buttons and levers are at. A little bit of housekeeping to start with.
Okay.
And then we'll take a break in say like 20 minutes or so.
Okay, that's perfect. And
Yep.
I just want to add, as Sean's going through the workshop, if you have any questions, you get lost, or just trying to figure things out, we have that suite of people manning the chat window, and we will try to keep up with your questions and keep them answered as best we can. And we do not have a problem if you really get stuck and we need to ask Sean a question, and he's more than willing to quickly answer that question and then move on. So please use us as resources. We are here for that reason.
Yep.
Thank
Excellent.
you, Sean.
And one additional thing to add to what Shane was talking about there at the end was the resources. We also have a YouTube channel, and this session is being recorded and will probably be up on Tuesday next week, I'm guessing. Takes a little bit of time to render it and publish it to YouTube. And we have a ton of different resources on there that you might be interested in. Good. Let me share my screen. Good. This is what we're going to be working toward, by the way, what you're looking at here. But before we get to that, you should have received an email at about 11:14 this morning with, you obviously have the Zoom information, so you got here, but also inside there you have the workshop exercise and a PDF of the presentation that Shane just gave. One thing of note about the exercise is that some people have Adobe products on their computer, and when you open it with that, it makes it difficult to copy and paste, say, names or pathways into your session. And the way to get around that is once you download that, you can right click and open with Chrome or Microsoft Edge. And when they open in those web browser environments, you're able to copy and paste pieces of it. And that's just kind of a tip for a little bit of time saving, unless you're a really fast typist. But I like the cut and paste kind of strategy a little bit more. But just if you haven't already downloaded that, you might want to go look at your emails and download that now, specifically the workshop exercise. Good. And I'll close this so it doesn't keep popping up on our YouTube video later on. And I mentioned also, this is what we're going to be working towards. And I have this up not just to show you kind of the idea of what our map viewer will look like, but also how to arrange the real estate you have available to you on your screen. One thing right off the bat, when we get to the break, and if you don't have one already, like a trackball or a mouse are pretty much essential for doing, well, ArcGIS Online, but pretty much any kind of GIS. You need to have the roller and be able to scroll around much more easily. Using the touchpad on your computer is going to be extremely difficult in comparison. Good. So mentioning real estate, though, I digress. What I have found is best for me, and I know everyone has got to be pretty much an expert in Zoom and probably a lot in webinars and that sort of thing over the course of COVID, but over our course of learning how to present material virtually, my strategy has come to be having the working screen in the middle, that being the ArcGIS online session that we'll be working within, having the directions or the exercise over to the left, and having my Zoom over to the right. I mean, if you have a preference besides that, that's fine. And then I like to leaf things so I can toggle from one to the next and upward. Everyone has their preference on how they like to go through the exercise. You will see, I've actually just added some extra highlights. I will more or less, actually, I'll probably stick to the directions pretty close this time because I just revised them over the last couple of days, because I'm excited to say this is going to be the first time that I'm doing a workshop on the new map viewer. That it came out oh, gee, it was a little while back, a couple of years ago, really, but it was through in beta for quite some time until last year. And finally, they've updated it with not just everything that you could do in the old map viewer, but much more. And honestly, now that I'm getting the hang of it, I like it more, but it is more complicated because it does many more things. But I say that because I did update an old exercise and change a number of things around. So now I'll probably be referring to the directions to keep on track. What you may like to do is just go through the directions on your own speed and listen to me in the background. Some people have found that to be their preferred way of doing it. A lot of people will watch my screen set up maybe over to, like I said, their Zoom over to the right and listen to what I'm saying and try to follow along that way. And occasionally people will just want to listen and watch and then go back through either referring to the YouTube video or the directions and do it on their own. I do recommend trying to follow along though, if you can right now, just because if you run into some kind of trouble, we have our whole team here to help you out and answer questions when you get to those sticky points. Good. So again, this is going to just be a overview. You don't have to do any of the things I'm telling you to do or what I'm covering right now. This is just for info only, just to give an orientation. And then when we get our hands into it here in the next hour, then some of the stuff will make sense. As I know from experience, sometimes I've been working on something and found that it's only one click away and it might take me an hour to get there. But if I've just seen it before, kind of like seen it with repetition, then it gets to be much more easy. That said, I'm going to start off, I'm going to go over to ArcGIS Online. So what you would do to start with, and this is, you'll do this into the at the end of this hour, is we'll want to look up ArcGIS Online. Hopefully you have the credentials that were sent to you. You can click, fill in that information. I've already done that. So it would bring me to my ArcGIS Online session right here. You'll see across the top, there's a ribbon of options, of tabs, and each one of these has different options that fall below it. And by default, it'll frequently bring you first to either your home or your organization tab. I never do anything in the home tab, but I just wanted to start here so I could move from left to right to describe some of the options that are available to you. In gallery, if I go to this, you will see all kinds of different types of data that are available to you through either your organization. In this case, it's a gallery of our organization, UCANR-IGIS group. All these layers that we've curated and shared organizationally or openly on ArcGIS Online. And this includes maps, layers, scenes, apps, some of these terms you'll kind of get the hang of later on. Again, I might want to stress that I know that you're not born with the knowledge of all the terminology of web mapping words. And so there's if you have any questions about this, throw it in the chat. We're happy to answer. Specifically, it's often easy to confuse web maps versus web mapping applications or web apps. There's a lot of almost very similar sounding terms that we'll come across. But essentially, to make it simple, is layers are exactly that, the layers that go inside of a map, and a map is the drawing board of how you put those layers together. And then once they're published, they become a web mapping application or an app of some sort. And those different types of apps might include story maps as types of templated formats. They could be web page-esque looking kind of pages, or any number of other kind of like more graphically like designed with infographics and that kind of thing included. Think like titles and legends and neat lines and that kind of thing. So anyways, I'm moving on. I'm going to skip map for right now because we're going to come back to that. And next I'm going to go to scene. I'll expand this so all of you can see this. Well, I'm not going to go on too much about this, but it is a good place to start, just to show that some of your data can be overlaid in kind of 2.5 dimension. I say like 2.5 because it's not really truly 3 dimension. You can't look up from the underneath things, but it gives you kind of a nice view of different options that you can see. I'm going to just click one of these as an example. Hopefully it works. Some of them are not always as stable as you would like them to be. And it doesn't, and it just gives me a different scene. So there's no layers in this one. I use some of those will have options that will appear. If I have a roller ball, I can scroll in and out and look at different things at different angles. Unfortunately, this doesn't appear to have data. You'll also notice across the top that the horizontal ribbon disappeared. And this is because it's now been accumulated into this little hamburger stack of lines on the top left-hand corner. The same thing happens within the map if we're using map. So let's get out of here. We don't need to get into 3D kind of views, but just know that that's there. Usually it shows a default of some kind of scene that you can look at, but it's just time it didn't, but it's not important. Moving on to notebooks. Now, this is something that might be of importance to a number of you. And Shane mentioned this in kind of passing in his presentation, is that traditionally the desktop environment has been where you've done all your analysis and like kind of the more tricky kind of cartography uh, and different symbolization and that sort of thing. Now you can do a lot of the analysis that you could do there inside of ArcGIS Online. And one of the ways of doing that is doing it within notebooks. And this is built on top of Jupyter notebooks using Python. There are some little kind of, there's some aspects to it that you have to get the hang of, like bringing in like packages and pointing your make sure all your dependencies are all good. But it's you can set up notebooks in here. You can either create a new notebook. There's different levels. There's standard. So this is for light analysis. There's advanced, and this uses some credits. And then there's the higher GPU supported processes that will run you about 30 credits per hour. Some processes, that's very much worth it. And so you just know that, and then you can manage different notebooks. You can check about shared notebooks, and Esri sample notebooks is something that's kind of maybe of interest to you. Good. Moving on to groups. This is important. Shane mentioned this before, that you have the ability to share what you've created or what you publish with just yourself. It's kind of nested with just yourself within a group that's within your organization, to your whole organization, or to everybody at large. At the group level, this is where you can create groups, or you can refer to groups that you have already created. Like I have the ground squirrel, the East Bay mud groups, like variety of groups, the environmental stewards groups that I've had projects with over the past, and then they're all in here. Or you can create group and invite people to those groups. Just note, this comes up once in a great while, is that you can't very effectively, or not easily at least, share across organizations. For something like that, you need to reach out to Esri and make special arrangements. But yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. So your group has to be within your organization. Good. Going to content. Content is somewhere where you will hang out, I would, so to speak, a bit of the time when you're working on ArcGIS Online. Oh, I see a new feature in ArcGIS Online has popped up down across the bottom of my screen. I'm not going to click on that because they've been doing quite a bit of updates lately. There's including in ArcGIS Online's analysis tools that are really neat, and we'll kind of touch on those in a little bit. Anyways, right back to my content. In your content, you'll see you can have filters that you can set up on the bottom left-hand corner. You have folders. I have a number of projects, and specifically I have a training folder where I put a bunch of my workshop material, so it doesn't kind of I can find my data a little bit more easily. Across the center, this is all of the content based upon the most recently created or saved. You'll see web maps, web map experience. This is from Experience Builder. It's a web app template. Instant app. We'll play with this at the end of the workshop today. In fact, I want to try to have enough time to touch on Experience Builder too, just so you know it's there and how to work it. There's feature layers, hosted feature layers specifically, are layers that are generated and hosted is the service that's available that makes it so it's fully functional. In this case, we are hosting it from our organizational account, so we have full access for analysis purposes. Sometimes you'll see a feature layer that isn't labeled as hosted, and you can't do all of the things with it that you would like to. I'll show you a way during the exercise to kind of scrape off those layers off of online to make them your own though. So you can see CSV files, story maps, you name it. There's all kinds of different web map, let's call them maybe elements for lack of a better term, or maps. There's that are available in there. You can see the modified date. There's other options that can be done. You can favorite some of these. So if you go over to the far right, you can see that there's you can open them in Map Viewer or Map Viewer Classic. So we've switched to Map Viewer. You can see who the owner is of these. If I click on favorites, then I can see some of the things that I've starred in the past, so I can get quicker and easier access to them. And those favorites is you have to open them up to set that or expand it to be able to get into the setting as a favorite. There's groups, and where some of these there's group shared layers that are available to you, your organizational layers, and that's another redundant way we can get to we have other ways of getting to our organizational data, and Living Atlas. Living Atlas is neat because there, as Shane mentioned, there is now tons, and I mean tons of data available, both through Living Atlas, which is one large kind of pool of online data, curation of data, as well as ArcGIS Online itself has its own repository of tons and tons of different types of data. Between the two, you got tens of thousands, if not more, data available at your fingertips. Good. Last thing over here, organization. In here, this is somewhere it might pop up when you first open it up. Usually you'll see your credits that are available to you. I'm an administrator, so my credits are going to be ridiculously higher than what you might see, but I can see the number of members and so forth in the organization. It's important to note the credits. We have, like I said, an absolute ton of credits right now. We have set limits though, because we one time had one of our advisors try to geocode every address in LA County twice, and it used up virtually all of our credits. And what that means is they tried to take the address locations and then plot all of the addresses on a map. You see members of our organization, licenses of what's available to us. And that's one of the reasons why we recommend that everyone try to get their ArcGIS Online license from us for the workshop, because some extensions aren't included with some organizational accounts. I don't think that'll be an issue today, but in some workshops it is. Good, and I can skip the rest of those. But one more important thing that I'll point out before we get onto map is this top little cluster button up. There's 9 dots at the top right corner. These are a whole bunch of peripheral apps that are associated around ArcGIS Online that are all tied into it, including the map viewer we'll be working on, story maps, that's a separate type of application, field map designer, experience builder I mentioned, but then there's just all these others. So just know that this is here for you if you need it. Now I'm going to go back to the map. And when I do that, I'm going to switch, let me close this and actually go to the map that I have. Which one is it? Nope. Nope, That's the new things that are available. What do I do with it? Oh, it's right over here. Okay. So this is, I'm just going to bring this up because it's easier to view things if there's already something in the map frame. This is what the map viewer will look like. If I would have clicked on map right here, it would bring me to something like this. This is already set up, so I'm going to leave it here for now. With all these different layers in here, it's going to look kind of chaotic, but I want to have to be able to refer to different layers for different examples of what the buttons and levers do. Without the layers inside, you don't have the conditional options that if I started a blank map that I might have. Specifically, right, running across the left side, I will have a whole bunch of basic options that I'll work with frequently. And the most common one that you'll work with is the layer stack, is the layers pane is what we're looking at here. Call these panes. What I can also do is I can expand this so we get the titles or collapse it, but I'll expand it so everyone knows what we're looking at. Layers is where we'll see in this case, we have some public view DINs. These are damage inspection reports from burns for the Caldor fire. I'll tell you a little story about that in a little bit, but there's so you can see these houses, the little house icons on there that will appear and disappear if I open and shut the eye on those. I can click on these three buttons to be able to zoom to show properties, to show a table, so attributes for that, to save. Sometimes we'll want to duplicate this or remove it from our map, and that just went crazy, whatever just happened there. If you see that, I don't know what happened there. Oh, well, that's odd. If I turn those on and off, it just appears. I know that layer is one of the ones down below. There's just, oh, there it came back. So you'll be working in your layers group, and we'll kind of go over that a bunch during the hands-on portion. We'll also have tables. If you have CSV files, for example, that could be in there. You can change your base map. So I just counted, there's 30, and one new thing is on the most recent updates. You can now add additional base background layers from Living Atlas for kind of to be your background. You can do charts or infographics that can be entered in there. Legends are options. And then we always say save often and frequently. You can save or you can open an existing map. So if I click on that, you can see it. You might have to save as, and this is a good time to mention this. Whenever you save something in ArcGIS Online or import or create a file, you have to add tags. And you'll see what that means when we start working with the hands-on, but without the tags, it makes them less discoverable. But strangely, I just found out that sometimes if you import a file, you don't set the tags, it won't even come up into your map correctly. So odd. I don't know why that glitch occurred when I practiced earlier. Good. But to solve any kind of issues that have come up, I have created this map or included all of the data within a map. So if worst comes to worst and say your system shuts down and you didn't save it, you can go to the very bottom of page 19 in the directions has instructions on how to open all of your data back up that's already been set up for you. Good. Map properties, share map, and then create app. And this is where we have the different instant app, the experience builder, story maps for a couple different options of how we can publish that to a full-fledged web mapping application. One more thing to note before we, couple things to note before we continue on to the break here in a minute is if we're going back to the layers, this is very common within ArcGIS Online or Esri products now. This is their new strategy. If you are working with something here, you can click on it. And if I click on it a couple times, you'll see properties come up on the right side of the screen. So this is where you have just your basic ribbon of options. And when you want to do edits or analysis or filtering or changing symbology or style, that's all done on the right-hand side. And that is contextual based upon which layer you click. So right now I clicked the Caldor DINS public view copy. If I went down to ANR locations, then the ANR locations would pop up, and you'll see that there's a different number of different property options or analytical tools that are available depending on the type of layer and how it's hosted. I'll go back to the first one. You'll see all these different options down in here. And with these, you'll see one thing that'll come up a lot is the visibility range. If I slide that, this little triangle shows what scale I've zoomed out to. So see, if I zoom in and out, that triangle moves. And this is where you can set the visibility range. So say if I wanted to make it so if I'm looking at it from a distance, I want to be able to see that layer. But if I zoom in and I want it to disappear, then that can happen too. Sometimes files will automatically come in with the wrong visibility range for what you need. And so you'll need to go down and change that. And you'll see that in a couple of the files that we'll be importing here shortly. Good. This is also where you can change style. We'll be playing with that quite a bit. Filter, so we can filter out excess files. So in this case, I have a set filters, and look at that crazy hatch pattern that occurred again. And filter, and then a number of other options that we'll be playing with here as well, including pop-ups and how to set pop-up names and different files that you can have included in there. Good. So you can see this layer, it actually has pop-ups of a family residence that was 1 to 9% burned. Actually, I have a friend that was one of the people that did inspections for this particular fire, environmental scientist. So with that, one last thing to say, and then we'll take a 10-minute break, is if you would like to during the break, is you can go down to information, and under information, that's on the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a tutorial gallery. And so you can, I'll just click that right now to show you that it's there. And inside of that tutorial gallery, you'll see all kinds of different options, getting started with ArcGIS Online, making smart maps, symbol size, just all these different like tutorial options that you can go through. I just wanted to point this out just so if you want to continue your education with this stuff, you have that option. You know that it's there. Good. And that is from the information at the bottom. And with that, I am going to shut this down. Just leave it. And let's come back at, let's see, let's say 2:13. And we'll then we'll start to get our hands on. If in that time period, if you need, try to get logged into ArcGIS Online if you can. So you go search for ArcGIS Online login, log in using your credentials. If you have any trouble, go ahead and let us know in the chat, and Shane or Robert can set you up an account or help so correct anything if need be. They're experts at that sort of thing. And I'm going to look at the chat right now. Good. Oh, and Robert mentioned that notebooks need special permission to use. They're not by default available, but we won't be using them in the workshop today. Okay, there you go. And that was in response to someone not having a notebook option because of a UC Berkeley account. I don't think in this workshop that there'll be any issues with different accounts. Sometimes in some workshops that matter. Now, what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to get our hands dirty a little bit with the hands-on portion of the workshop. And hopefully you've brought up ArcGIS Online, you've got in, and we're going to jump straight into the map tab right here at the top. One thing I just noticed is that in one of the very recent updates, they changed it. So now I see that you have to add favorites down here instead of just clicking it and starring it. So there's something to know about like that, about the 3-dot drop down there. That's in the contents. But going now, everybody, if you could just go to the map tab and click on that. I don't think this will bring me back to, nope, yeah, it'll be empty. Sometimes you'll have to create a new map. That's one of the reasons why you want to save frequently, because you don't want to go out and then come back in and find out this stuff that you were hoping was still there isn't there. So say if I was working in my map and I decided to go out and look at my contents and then I came back in, sometimes you can lose your map. So once you're in here, the first thing we're going to do is go to the add button at the top corner of the screen here. And let me look at the chat, make sure hopefully everyone is okay. I'm going to try to bring up the chat because I do have a little space I can put it in here on my screen. Let me know if you're not there yet. As you can see, I have my instructions over here to the left. I am going to be starting on this page 12. So right here where it says add ArcGIS online data part 1. And in my case, I've actually highlighted sections. This is so I can my eyes can catch it quickly, and then I can just type or copy and paste it into my search options. And specifically under add browse layers, I'm going to go down and add layer. There we go. Just by clicking browse layers, it popped this the pane up. And instead of searching in my content, I'm going to go down to ArcGIS Online. Okay, now here's something that's pretty important that is something brand new to this. That's kind of neat, I'd say, but it can be a hassle if you forget to do it because you won't find what you're looking for. As you see these little levers or kind of like the equalizer looking thing next to the search, click on that and click on the arrow next to sort by. So it defaults to date modified, which is not ideal. Relevance is much better. So we want to switch it to relevance right off the bat. Otherwise, the things that you're searching for won't pop up. You'll have all kinds of other things that come up depending on what tags are included when those files were created. So relevance is what we really want. Good. And
Hey,
then we can
Sean,
X out. Yes.
do you have to do that every time, or do you know if it saves that?
No, it doesn't save that. It is a
Okay.
hassle. But once it works good. And then you can switch between them to be able to see if you want to have it by title, if you want to have it like really strict on just the title name, but you have to know what the title is then, or the date modified, if you're looking for the most recent data. A little more power, a little teeny bit, one step that you might not want to always have to do. Good. So once I've change it to relevant, I want to type in or copy and paste, as I often do, from the directions. Census counties. And so the first one that pops up, the USA Census counties, actually it's the second one that pops up. You'll see that there's some different options there. It shows that it comes from Living Atlas, and then it's labeled as authoritative. So it's been certified as being good. We can add that to our layers, or we can also click on Esri to see who manages it, and you can go to the gallery and other stuff that's available. You don't need to do that. It'll give you an overview. Essentially, this is the metadata about this that we might want to refer to see what kind of authorization is available. If it's published here, it should be openly available, but still just know that you want to refer to that sometimes. But what we'll do is just click add and add that to our map. And you'll see that it will cover up pretty much everything that you can see on there. And I'm going to expand this out a little bit further on my web map here. Good. And then this is where having the rollerball is quite handy. Scrolling, it's kind of a little bit yeah, not the ideal look that you might want to have. You really just want to have the county boundaries perhaps. And I will show you how to change that right now, even though some of the directions for that are later in the exercise, but no time like the present. So what I'm going to do, instead of browsing for more layers, that there will be more layers that we'll add down here where you could add in state boundaries and other options, major cities, for example. We'll skip those for time's sake. But I want to do a little bit of style change or symbology changing on this layer. So now what I'll do is I'll X out of the browse layers now that it's been added and click on the layers tab on to the far left. And you can see the only layer that's included in here now is the USA Census counties. But already by default, the properties for it are popped up on the right-hand side of the screen. But if they weren't, I could just click that until they do come up. Under properties, let's scroll down and we'll see that the visibility range is as wide as can be all the way across. There's no reason to set it as any limiting levels there. And you'll see the symbology is what showed right here, but we want to change that to something a little bit nicer. And the way we do that is the next option down is styles, the little circle, square, triangle. I'll click that. So you can click that as well. The symbols, and we'll go down to set style options. Once in here, I'll click on the blue square. And I don't think that we need to have a fill color, honestly. We don't need any kind of fill color, but I will give you a caveat on that one. I can change the fill cover so it's all dark and there's this fill transparency. I can set it is completely transparent to the far right or not transparent to the left. What I might want to do is set it not quite all the way transparent, is because that will sometimes make layers on top of it just pop a little bit more. They'll stand out if there's just a little bit of grain in the background, just to darken it. It's just from just practice, I found that out. As far as outline goes, I might set that as a darker outline. And that one I don't need any transparency for because you just want to have those clean edge lines there. Good. And once I've played with the symbology a little bit, I can also look inside and check the symbol color this way by stretching around and adjusting it on the screen here. Or if you have a hex code, like if you go to Color Brewer and you have a hex code for some good color design that you'd like, you can copy and paste that into there as well. And I'll click done and done. Good. So that's how the style has changed. If you can see, when I've clicked on something on this side, then the options for editing pop up on the far right side. Next, let's add another layer. I'm going to go through. There's some information only. I think I talked to, this is where I already talk about like the setting the relevance for when you add the layers in, which is kind of handy. Next, let's add the Caldor fire data. And so this time we can either copy and paste, or you can just type in Caldor fire. But we'll go to add again at the top, browse layers. Under the drop down from my content, go down to ArcGIS Online again. You see how I did that? Add, browse layers, switch to ArcGIS Online, and then we'll put in Caldor fire. Let me check on the symbol, sort by, see how it switched back to date modified. I would love it if they fix that. That'd be really nice. I'm going to go to relevant again. And then the most relevant one is the most popular file used, and that's the damage inspection network survey that's available, or feature service. You can click on this layer and see the profile of what it looks like. and get more information about it. And you can do that, but we don't need to dig into it too far, but that's for your information only. It's available. Good. We'll just, if I just click on once, you can see this, the metadata pops up again, but we'll just click on add feature. And you'll see all of that data pop up around the edge of the areas that are within the burn scar of that fire. Some of them show like anything from destroyed greater than 50%, major damage 26 to 50%, and so forth. Just different levels of damage. And then underlying that, there are also attributes, including the type of structures that were burned, whether they be a single story family residence, multi-story, you name it. All of that information is available there as well. We're going to leave the symbology the same that it comes in as, because it's actually pretty nice. That can be built into a layer and saved, and I could show you how to do that if you'd like. It doesn't come up too often though. Now that this is in here, this is something to know though, is once we start putting in other layers, the layers that you put in will often go over the top of what was there before. So when we put in this next file, the Caldor final burn severity for teams, then that will cover it up. So going back to here, you'll see, let's see, is it, there it is. That's the next one down by grade from the National Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, of the USGS. So that's the next one we'll want to add in there. We don't need to click on it other than to click on the add to add that file in. So hopefully you're still in the browse layers. If not, add browse layers, ArcGIS Online, search for Caldor Fire under the relevance, and then we'll add in Caldor final soil burn severity for teams and add that in. This is a file that I mentioned before. I just recalled is the one that is set with a visibility range wherein it can't be seen at the zoom level that we're set at. And so this is what we do about it. I'm going to move this over a little bit so I can expand this and you can see a little bit better. You see nothing popped up. We see if we go to our layers, you'll see that it's in there, but it's grayed out. And the reason for that is if I go over, if I turn that on in the properties, go to the top property one, the little levers, the horizontal equalizer, I scroll down and you can see this triangle shows the zoom level that I'm at right now. And it's outside of this band here. So if I grab that circle and pull it over, then it should appear on my map. But it'll cover up a lot of the structures that were burned. What you may want to do if you were going to create a map that was useful for people is you might have the burn severity set at a scale like this, and then set the lower range in. So if you are interested in, say, zooming into one structure at some point, then that would disappear. So we could see, like, if we had a different base map in the background, which I can show you how to do in a moment. But so for now, we can just leave it somewhere around like this. It's fine. Get out to the right and just a good squared zoom rate so we can see everything that's on there. Good. I don't think we need to change any symbology for this because it's pretty decent. For some reason, it's not writing on my screen very well today, as we saw before. That's odd. Anyways, it's fine. It'll pop up later on. So now it's visible. We can turn it off and on by just clicking this button here. And same thing would apply for the DINS damage inspection. I'm going to grab that, the little cluster of buttons, and drag it on top of the other one. And then you can see it appear. Pardon me, I had a cold last week, so my throat gets a little bit raspy. Good. Now that we've got that in there, let's do this. Let's save this map. So as soon as you've done a little bit of work, you want to save it. Some applications will auto save. This one doesn't do that. And so it's a hassle when you lose something. So let's go in and save as. So you go down the options, click save as. And this is where you need to put in a tag. I'm going to just put in junk. The reason for that is when I go back to my contents later on and I have whatever 20 versions of this same map from different workshops and all the practice times I've ran through it, then I can just get rid of all these extra files, but you can put in whatever you really would like right now. I'll just put in junk. You can say training, workshop, whatever you like. If it's a new word, you'll have to click enter to have it take. And then I have to add in a title. I don't know what we'll call this, just AGO practice. And I might have done that before, I bet. So I'll just say, give it a number. You can do whatever you want. This is going to be the name of your map. One thing that might be important to you, though, and this is important actually, if you're going to be publishing this where it's going to be public facing, you might want to put in a nice title, something kind of descriptive that would end up on the you might see at the top of your map, because depending on your web mapping application template, that can or can't, sometimes that can show and sometimes that hassle to edit. So I suggest putting in there, you don't need to have spaces, or you don't need to have underscores on at this level. There's you'll see GIS people put in underscores all the time. That doesn't pertain right here. So I'll just set in some random name and click save. Take a second. Now, if I do the refresh, hopefully my my map comes back up the right way. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, so just by refreshing it, it came back in, got the full amount or full area. Good. How's everybody doing? I'll take a peek at the chat. There's nothing in it. All right, so no squeaky wheels. We're all
Sean,
good.
you're a wizard.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Good. So moving on. So let's see. Moving down the list. So we've added that in and continue. I'm doing a lot of this from memory, but okay. Let's see here. Make sure I don't miss anything. Let's change the title to Caldor Burn Severity. Yeah, because that's a really convoluted name, and we don't need this crazy long burn severity title. So what we can do is we can just click on the 3 dots next to it under layers in the layers pane. Click on the 3 dots next to the burn severity layer, and then we'll select rename. And with this, just Control V, I did, or you can type in Caldor Fire Severity and click OK. And now your layer will be a lot clearer of a title. I'll cancel that out because we don't need that. Good. What else is included in here? I mentioned I rearranged some of the directions because I wanted to make this flow a little bit quicker, so we'd have plenty of time at the end to practice with the instant app and the experience builder. Good. Again, we already talked about that. Okay, we can browse Living Atlas. Go ahead.
I must have missed where the details thing on number 5 was.
On number 5?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, just actually we can just disregard that. The way I rearrange things, it doesn't yeah, that actually can just get deleted out of the exercise. That's for future exercises.
Thanks.
That's yeah, I streamline over certain things in here just because if I cover them a little bit earlier, then it doesn't matter. And really, that's just referring to the properties um, and some of the details that are included there. So for clarity. So moving on, Living Atlas. There's a bunch of neat layers in Living Atlas, which we aren't going to actually have in our final map, but are just kind of neat things that you might want to look at. And so let's go just I'll add a couple of these in here. Control C, wildfire risk to communities. So what I'll do this time is I'll add browse layers. And instead of my content, I'll do Living Atlas this time. And as we found out, look at over here, sort by relevance. I wish they'd fix that. And Control V. And this is a neat layer specifically because if I add this into the map, it's going to be quite large, by the way. This is the U.S. Forest Service came up with this map several years ago before and I don't remember what the date was on it. It was, does it say here? Oh, it's recently updated to 2023. It originally was from further back, but this is what makes this kind of interesting to me is now you'll see it goes to the top of the list. If I drag it down underneath the other layers, if you zoom in and look, and I toggle off the Caldor fire severity map, you'll see that it's at a different scale that was rendered, but it actually is somewhat similar for the where they predicted it would burn hotter, it did, and where they didn't predict or where they expected it not to burn so hot, it didn't. So it actually kind of, you can see the burn severity more or less matches up to the shape of what the predicted kind of risk of burn was going to be, the wildfire risk to communities. So if you were a modeler, that would kind of be some validation that you'd be kind of excited to see perhaps that your model worked. So anyways, I'm going to turn that off in the background for now. Go down, we can look at other options. There's wildfire risk. There's that you can look for. There's U.S. Current wildfires. We can add that in there. I'm going to skip that for right now just because we're in March and there's no real major wildfires. That's a lot more interesting when we do this workshop in August or September. You'll see all kinds of wildfires that are available, that are out there that you can look at the data for. And then finally, air quality. And this is one that might be of interest. So I'll put that one in there. Control C. And I'm going to go add, browse layers, search, Control V. This, by the way, if you don't have this one in there, oh, see, it didn't show anything. So I have to sort by relevance. Oh, I searched in my content. My bad. I forgot to go to Living Atlas again. There you go. The air quality. I'll add that in there. And this will pop up what the parts per million count of whatever dust or smoke or whatever is in the air. So 28, not too bad. So during the Caldor fire, some of these got up to over 1,000, well over 1,000, which is, that's terrible air quality. But here's something just to know. And let me see if we do that yet. It isn't one of the later steps of the exercise. I'll just mention it right now, though. This data that we're bringing in here, this is near real time. So that the air quality is updated. I forget how many, I think it's 4 times a day, if I remember correctly. That value is continuously updated. Well, what if you want to have a snapshot of a given date? and you say next month you want to know what the air quality was on this date, not next month's date. What you can do is you can grab that data from off of line through an analytical technique where you can, if I was in my layers and went to this and brought up the had this layer in here, I could go over to analysis tools again, and you don't have to do this, by the way, this is just information only. Use proximity, and let's see, I thought it was proximity. You can enrich data. That's one way to do it. What you do is where did it go? Find closest, calculate, no. So you can run any kind of analytical process on it. And join features. Here's a good one. Summarize data. If you join features with, say, the county's data in the background, it would bring that data all down and save it into your own ArcGIS Online. So then you would have a snapshot of those dates. That's a very handy way. I mentioned before is if you come across data that's online that it's that's dynamic or changing, or you don't want to, you don't have full access to analyze it. That's one way to do it, is join it with something that you have, and then you'll have access to that data. Good. See what the time is here. Next step, let's bring in some tabular data, but before we do that, let's take a 5-minute break. All right, so the air quality layer that's in there, we're not going to need that anymore. So we could either turn it off, but just for the sake of getting rid of clutter, what I might do is just click on this and remove it. Clicking the click on this, I meant the 3 dots to the right, and then click remove, and then I don't have too much stuff cluttering up my my map window right now. For that matter, I could do the same thing with the the wildfire risk to communities layer as well. Click on those and remove that as well, because again, having that those layer contents kind of tidied up is a good thing. Sometimes it's tempting to, well, a lot of times we'll put in a whole bunch of data into a map and then figure out what we want. And that's a common practice of throwing it all in there and then removing everything you don't want, or organizing it in a way that it's like not too cluttered up. Also, a rule of thumb, just if I hadn't mentioned before, convention tends to be that the smallest objects are on the top of this layers. And as we saw before, whatever's on the top here is also on the top in the map. And then logic would follow that something like points and lines would go on top of rasters like that on top of the base maps, or the larger scale, in this case, the counties across the whole entire nation layer. Good. Let's add in another kind of data now, and this is tabular data. If you go to the exercise, the very bottom of page 15, and you click, and it actually wraps around on the page 16. For future reference, I'm going to probably move that onto another page, just because I don't want it split up. But what you'll want to do is copy and paste that full URL and put it into your browser. And after you've done this, Control C, go to your browser, whatever one you're using. And in this case, I'll just put it over to the side, Control V, enter. You'll see there's the option to download it at the top right-hand side. You also see inside of here that this has a field ID number, a location. So this is the UC Cooperative Extension Office. And then there's an address that you don't get to see all of it, but it's a full address of like the street, city, zip code, that sort of thing is all included within that address field. I show that to you now because I could open it up in Excel once it downloads, but we don't need to do that in a moment. But so first you download that, and I've already done this today. In fact, I've done it a bunch of times in the past. So I'm going to X out of that. And we're going to add that file into our map. And how we do that is we go up to add again. But this time, instead of clicking browse layers, we're going to select add layer from file. So the third option down. So add layer from file, click that. And you'll see there's a variety of options, including Google Drive and Dropbox in your device. And by the way, just for info only, I've also included the directions of how to bring in a Google Sheet into this instead of a CSV file. But right now we're going to do a CSV file that we just downloaded. So back to the window, instead of Google Drive, we'll select from your device. And in my case, I have had it 3 times now, so I've put an _3 after it, and I'll click on that. So in your case, and this is, by the way, you might have to navigate to your downloads wherever you just downloaded it to, and then select the file, the ANR locations _CSV file that you just downloaded. Select that and click open. And open. There we go. Other way you could do is just drag it and drop it on there if you have to go to your file browser. What we'll be doing now is we'll just go with the defaults. Pretty simple. Create hosted feature layer and add it to the map. And I'll click next. It should automatically recognize, based upon the column header, what is what. And what I mean by that is that in this case, it shows that it's that there are 3 fields. The FID is just an integer, the location is a string, and the address is an address. So we'll click next on this. And so it recognizes the location as an address or place name. And then it also recognizes that location information is all in one field. So I might note there is if you had latitude and longitude, say you had GPS coordinates that you were plotting on your map, they might be in multiple fields. So it would automatically detect that it was located in 2 different fields. That could also apply to addresses though, as well. And then you'll see this process, which again is called geocoding. That means plotting positions on a map based upon address. That's it automatically calculates what the credits from the organization would be to do that. And so I have 6,000 something credits there available. And if I needed more, or if any of you needed more, in fact, I could probably just reauthorize more for myself. But if anybody else needs more credits, just reach out to us if you're part of our organization, and Shane Fire or Robert Johnson can probably help you out with that. Good. Once this is done, I'll just click next again. Here's something that's, I've already downloaded this today, so I'm going to have to go to change it to a 4, but you don't have to do that. This is something interesting I found out, which was odd, is if I didn't put in a tag, it didn't show up on my map. I found that out on like 1 and 2 _1 and 2 earlier. So I had to put in a tag and then it appeared. Usually it stops you from progressing without a tag, but in this case it didn't. And then once that's in, I click add to map. Oops. Okay. Well, it shouldn't hang you up. Let's see, title.
Sean, I had a question.
Yes.
If we're using like our organization's ArcGIS online, like in this, we have 15,000 credits. Do you think it's okay to use 2 credits? Like, I mean, we don't have like.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's not an issue at all.
And if I can add, you can do a lot of things with 15,000 credits. And depending on how your organization is set up, Esri is readily willing to work with you on credits. So
So it's
Just so
just,
you know.
yeah, we just haven't like checked in about using credits. I didn't know that that was going to be a thing that we were going to have to do, but it sounds like it's not a big deal to use 2 credits.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I had to change the name of my file coming in. It wasn't liking it. So I'll just add that in there again. Add layer from file. This is the other way you can do it. Download. Just drag and drop. And I'll just next through everything. And then find, oh shoot, I forgot to add a tag. Let's see if it'll come up on my map. So yeah, the credits issue is yeah, it is so rarely an issue. When you get into some raster analysis, that can happen. Oh, good, it came in this time. Okay. Some things are kind of perplexing. But if you, hopefully everybody had a chance to get that to come in. The way you know that it did is it'll give you a little dot of some sort or another, in this case, over by Placerville. And if I click on that, you'll see a pop-up that shows the address of where that's located. And this you see Cooperative Extension Office for the Central Sierra. And then there's also El Dorado. It shows that it's in El Dorado County on the second feature, and that's the overlapping area. That symbol is not very apparent though. So let's fix that right now where we're at this spot. And if you all remember how we did that, if I click on this over in the layers, it should pop up on the right-hand side of the screen. If I click on the properties, you'll see A&R locations, CSV _40 or _4. Go down to style. So this is the second option down with the little circle, square, and triangle. And we'll pick a select a style options from a single symbol. Here, click on that dot again, and it'll start giving us some options. This basic point is not much. It's not very intuitive. So what we might want to do is switch it to something like, not a basic shape. Let's use a government shape. And if we scroll down here a little bit, I know that there is a building structure. So like you can see how far I scroll down, about 2/3 of the way, 3/4. There's a little building. That's a good one, it looks like. And I can click on that and click done. Now it's still pretty teeny there. So let's increase that size a little bit to something like 30. There, it makes it pop a little bit more, you can see. And now I can click done. So you can see where the Cooperative Extension Office is now. Good, and I don't need to have any more about the style right there. You also see there's another Cooperative Extension Office up here for the Placer County area. Good. So what I'm working toward right here is this thematic idea we have these Cooperative Extension Offices, they represent all of the counties in the state. And those offices have any number of different resources for people, including support for timber harvest planning that some offices do. Depends on the area. Obviously, there's not going to be a lot of timber harvest planning maybe in Fresno or Tulare County, but there will be ag advisors in those areas. There's sometimes there's CalFresh, or there's food resources that are available for people that are displaced. So what we might want to do is set up a map where prospective clients or people might want to be able to find their way to the closest office, or that office might want to find their way to residences that could use their help within like the burned area. In this case, just as kind of a theoretical kind of idea, depending on what organizational interests you have, your interest could obviously be something different, but the same principle can apply to groups of people that you might be interested in connecting with, or connecting to one of your offices or business locations. So with that said, once we have that office in there, we've already changed the style. I showed you how the directions are there for doing it for Google Drive as well from Sheets. And now we're going to, let's see, exercise attribute data. Okay, let's look at the just the attribute table. I see this. This is, I rearranged this in order because it was more intuitive to go to this DINS layer. I click on this, the damage assessment, and then click the three arrows, or three dots rather, and show the table. And the table will show up all across the bottom. And so what you see here is that it shows the level of damage. So if there's no damage in single family, the damage level can range from no damage to, there's so many houses, there's 400 something burned in Grizzly Flat alone. So there's goes from no damage to almost entirely destroyed. That fire was so hot, my dad's best friend's car, the rims melted on his car. He was like in one of the really center of the hot area. That was something else. But the so you can see there's different levels of damage. Well, if a place was entirely destroyed, people are going to be completely displaced. There's no maybe sense in showing a routing from the office, but perhaps for offices that were, or for locations that had partial damage, I might want to show this as a resource. So jumping slightly ahead in the directions, I want to show you how to filter just those locations that you're interested in. Something to do before that that's not on the directions that I find is handy sometimes is to duplicate a layer. So in this case, we have the DINS public view. Let's click these dots right next to it and click duplicate. So then you have a copy of this layer in here that you can refer to. So we have two stacked on top of each other. That way we can turn off one. And I guess we can turn off the copy for now. Doesn't matter what stack they're going to be in, but I'm going to turn the copy off or blind the copy. And the reason for that is if we ever want to refer back to it, we ever want to get to the data that's underlying it, then it's still there for us after we do a filter. So we're going to do a filter on the public view one without the copy. How we do that is I click on that on the layers, and you'll see the public view show up over on the other side. Let's go down to the filter option. Good. So there's filter, third one down, it's a little funnel looking thing, and we're going to add an expression. So we're going to say damage is, let's go with affected. One, you can do major or affected. Let's just go with affected for now, because there's a 56 affected structures. And you can see then it limited it down to just those affected structures. So what you could do if you wanted to is we'd add another expression, and we're just going to select, instead of damage, let's go with structural type. And there's the single family multi-story, there's the single family single story. We can leave it on multi-story for right now. There's quite a few of these. If you wanted to have two of them or more of them, instead of saying damage is, you could switch it to damage is not, and then just repeat that expression each one of those until you only have the two that are left. But that's going to be time consuming, so we don't need to do that right now. We'll just go with the structural type as a single family residential multi-story. Good. And once that's done, we just click save. So if we zoom in a little bit, now you can see, if we come over to the other side, if I turn on and off the other layer, you can see that it's just limited it to the structures that we're most interested in, that are perhaps most pertinent to our map. Just something to note, back to the attribute table, if I if I turn on the attribute table there, it's for the one that's full, the copy. You don't have to do this, but I can just show you how it can work. These will all pop up in here. If I click on these, it's kind of hard probably to see in the zoom, but they get outlined. They get with a cyan outline, they'll pop up on there, and maybe it's a little bit clearer if I get rid of the fire severity in the background. If I click on some of these and zoom out, you'll see there'll be a variety of ones that are highlighted that pop up. There's just so many of them, you don't see it very well in the zoom. When that's all done, what I can do is I can clear selection, and then it gets cleared that way. Good. Turn that back on. So that was just really info only for now. Good. So we did the filtering. Data enrichment. I have this included as optional. It's it could be added. So this could be added in as another factor. And I just wanted to show you that it's available. We don't necessarily need to do it right now. It's because it just takes a little bit of time, but I'll show you the process. We won't run the enrichment, but necessarily it's not needed, but it is kind of a cool tool. And how this works is, say we have these structures. I'm going to close out the one that has everything that's not the layers we want. Good. So I'm going to bring up the attributes for the damage assessment, and under here there's going to be the analysis tool that's about the fourth up from the bottom on the right. This is something that is really astonishing now compared to just even a year ago. There are tons of neat options in here that were not here before. They've rearranged a couple things I noticed, like instead of being proximity, they've switched join features to summary data, but some neat ones. There's zonal statistics and zonal statistics as table, which is a really common function that I run for analysis of rasters. That's where you get, like, say you have a shape file on top of like a normalized difference vegetation index, and then you can get zonal statistics of what the vegetation index values are, for example, or any other kind of raster analysis. But I digress. So there's all these there's find locations. Let's go with enrich data right here. Enrich layer. And what I could do, and I won't do right now, is I could go in and select the layer of the DINs. By the way, if I selected the one that has been filtered, any analysis that I run will only run on the 22 features that are selected. If I would have selected, instead of this one, the copy that is not filtered, so if I go to the copy one, it'll be like 4,000 something. That would be way too many to enrich right now. And I'm not even going to do the 22. But if I go to the 22, the public view DINs, the next one, add a variable, and you'll see this these various options that come up. Unfortunately, the terrain one doesn't pop up anymore, which I used to really like. But there's other things in here like at risk, for example, or crime. We could go with at risk. And then you can show all at-risk variables. So we could go under income, for example, household poverty, food stamps. You could look, that might be something for CalFresh. There's demographic indicators, languages, poverty, and household income. So here's an interesting one, the poverty index. So that could be one that you would add in, and what it would do is it would add the enriched value of the poverty index to the attribute table of the layer that you're looking at here. So this table right now has damage, structure, and attached. Well, the next column over would be the poverty index value that then would get enriched into for each one of these locations. We'll skip that for now though, because that's getting into weeds that we don't necessarily have to crawl through. But I want you to know that it's there. I also want you to know that's one way that you can just that you can get a snapshot and save both of those types of data to your own personal contents. One other thing too, if you click on the bottom, it'll show the estimated credits for that. And then there's some other things what we'll come back to as far as distance and miles and resulting layer and output name you have to put in there. Doesn't give us all the defaults like the older version did, but that's fine. Moving on. So join layers, the same exact workflow would apply there is enrich. So if we're instead of doing enrich layers, we could do the same thing with under summarize data, join features. It looks almost exactly the same all the way down. You could do the same thing, except for you're just not you'd be just selecting your target layer and then the join to the counties layer or something to that effect. We don't need to do that right now either. But the directions are here, and that's why they're labeled optional for time's sake. One analysis step that we will take, and then we won't run, but we will go through the steps just to learn the steps, is proximity to the ANR offices. So what we'll do, we'll go back. We're going to be still in the analysis tools. So we click on analysis tools over here. And under these tools, we're going to go down to proximity. That's correct, right? Yep, use proximity. Find closest is the fifth one down roughly. So after we've clicked analysis, tools, go down the use proximity and then find closest. We'll click on that option. In this case, we'll do the input layer as being the DIN's public view, not the copy, just the public view. We'll do the nearest layer being the ANR locations that we added in, the CSV file. You could technically add in barriers. So for example, if you had to do like county barriers, if that was pertinent, you could add that, but that's not necessary. You could either use driving time or driving distance. In this case, they're both the same exact thing, so it doesn't matter. But you could click whichever one of those ones you want. You can adjust departure times, all kinds of stuff. Those are new, by the way, to the map, which is kind of interesting. That's calling on Caltrans data is that, like that when you go on Google Earth and you try to, or Google Maps rather, and try to search for an address and drive time, that's drawn from the same source, I believe. Good. You can search the search range, so 100 miles. The output name, we would have to put something in, and we don't need to because we're going to do it a different way, but we can see the nearest ANR structures and facilities, the threatened structures, if we wanted to. You don't have to do that right now because, again, we're going to come back to this in a different way in a moment. And then there is the environmental settings. This is pretty important. What you might want to do is frame everything within your scene right here. So you just see the Placerville office and then all the locations. And from the processing extent, you can do the drop down and select display extent. That's a good way to keep it from trying to search for things from all over. It'll make it faster, use less credits, and then I can estimate credits, and it's probably like, I don't know, 30 or something like that. No, 11 credits. Good. So because it's just like a credit for some of those residents, or half a credit each. But we're not going to press run because this process takes 2 or 3 minutes, and I've already created this file for you. And so go to your directions on the bottom of 18 or 19, the top of 19. I've been shifting the directions as I've been making minor updates. Control C. We're going to copy the nearest use ANR facility to threatened structures. And we're going to add that into our map. This is a lot faster just to copy from there, go up to add data, browse layers. Under my content, click the drop down and go down to ArcGIS Online. And then paste that in, Control V. So you can see it, like I published that some time ago, and we can just add that in. That takes a lot less time than processing all of it all over again. Good. So now you see this routing map that goes from the locations to the facility. And we can get out of browsing layers and go back to layers. And now you see there's this is up at the top. If we click the drop down for it, you'll see that there's two things. There's the nearest features. Those are the points that we don't need. And then the connecting line. So we can turn off the points because we already have the facilities. And what we might want to do is drag, say, the office up above and then leave it there. You could also drag the DINs up to the top too. And so they pop out, and now you see the driving directions to the locations. Good. How's everybody doing on that? Is there any issues? I haven't looked at the chat in a bit. Oh, I see there's one chat. Let's see it's all on the same page. Okay. Yeah, that's just because I've been doing a couple enters and adjustments for up in the directions. I have to shift. I'm working off of the Google Doc. When I work through this exercise, if I see something that isn't placed right, I'll highlight it, or I'll delete it, or I'll change it as I go, because there's always get kind of ideas on how to improve the directions. Good. Now, once we've done this is a really good time to save. Save the document. And because you've already saved it once, you don't have to add a tag in there again. But now we have it have in most of the map that we need. I'm going to scroll down. We'll add in. How about this? Let's add in one more level, one more layer of data. And I was going to take a break right now, but while we're doing data adding additions, we can add in one more layer, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll spend the last half hour or so doing practicing web mapping applications. Good. So there'll be plenty of time for that. I'm on a good glide path for getting through all of this in the right pace. Hopefully it's a good pace for all of you as well. So here on the directions, it'll probably be on your page 19 as well. We have this FTP site from CAL FIRE. And what I would like you to do is copy that, Control C. Control V, and then enter. So this might be a good time for me to explain how this came about. So if I change my background, you all can do this too. It's in the directions later on, right before we go. But if I change I'll talk about this when we come back from the break. Disregard that, because we already have the CAL FIRE data in here. I was really happy when I found this. I'll explain why here shortly. This, by the way, is, I don't know how I ended up getting to it, but don't do this right now. It's incident data. Just watch for now. And because I don't want you to have to go try to navigate around like I'm going to do in a second. But so just stay here for now. But if I go up with enough levels, you'll see that there are all kinds of layers of different types of fires, or different fires that have occurred. In this case, all 2021 years. But if I go back even further, you see maps for 2022, 2021. There's a whole bunch of fire data sets that go back in time here. And when the fire was going on, then this data was being updated like a few times a day. And so I discovered it and realized that I could go in and pull this data, massage it a little bit, and throw it up on a web map. Once I got into it, I see that there's GIS folder and then incident data. And this is for every day the mapping crews from the USGS and the Forest Service were putting this data together and creating perimeters for the map. If I go down to the last one on the list, this is back to where you were at. So now time that you can do what I'm doing. Go down to the bottom, but not the last one. There's some weird error in the last one. Let's go to the second from last, the 916. Double click on that. And inside of that, you will see this Caldor Perim zip file. Go ahead and click on that and it'll start automatically. You'll download to your file folder. I'm going to go into that file folder now. It's in my downloads. And actually, I will probably create a folder here. Just this, you don't have to do this. I'm doing this for instructional purposes. Param. I'm going to move that perimeter file. So I already have it in here once from earlier. I'm going to move it in again. And inside of there, if I unzip this, you don't have to do this, but I will. I'm going to unzip it right here. Extract here. What you'll see is that this is a shape file with all these peripheral files. There's a database file, there's a projection file, there's an index file, the SBX. So all of these have the same name and they are all joined together. The thing with ArcGIS Online is you need to have at least 4 of these files, the shape, the SBX, the projection, and the database file, for it to come in and work in your ArcGIS Online. Fortunately, the way it's zipped up automatically, it's good to go. So you don't have to unzip it to see it, but I wanted to show you that what's inside that zip file. So this that I just downloaded is already, it's already available. And so how we'll do that now is to add that file in. Oops. I'm glad I didn't close it all the way. Good. Let me open the other one too. Good. Now that I've downloaded, I'll switch back to my directions. I will add data, add layer from file. I can go to my device and select that perimeter file that I just downloaded and open. Hopefully it lets me do it again. It recognizes automatically that it's a shape file. It already recognizes that I have that in there already from earlier. So I have to change my name a little bit and give it a tag. So you'll have to do this too. So you add from file, add in here, and then create and add to map. Okay, so I didn't like that because now it's picky about having in same named files. So what I'll do is it should come in fine for you, but since I've already done it, I'm going to browse layers in my content. And I'm going to just go and add it from the one that I added in earlier today. Good. So hopefully everybody gets this map layer on here that looks like this. Good. So I'll close the browse and go back to layers. And with the style button, see how it kind of like overwhelmed it? It's got to be too, I don't know, too bold on top of it. What I'll do here is I am going to switch this. I'm going to go over to style. So with it still highlighted over here, the Perim data set, I'll go over to the style button, second one on the right. Once it's been clicked, Go down to style options, click on the symbol. And then I'm going to set the fill transparency to 100% transparent. I might want to do it a little less than that and change the color to something else, just so it makes the structures pop a little bit on it. But that's just kind of preference. And then when I'm done with that, I'm done. And now you can see it really kind of popping out on your map. Good. Let's save that. And then we will create our final map when we come back. It's let's call it 3:30. Sound good? Let me look to see if there's any chat. Nope, no questions. So hopefully we're good to go here. If you really wanted to, you could probably adjust the location of this a little bit so it makes the other features pop a little better. But otherwise, it should look pretty much like that. Good. And then click done and save again. Always save. Let's finish this one up. As you can see, hopefully we're all about in the same place here. And if for some reason you weren't here, all that data is on the bottom of what would I say, 18 or 19? Yeah, here. Where did I put that in here? So there's information only. Okay, so I did include this one section. If anyone ever got to this point and didn't have everything they needed, there's directions on how to load most of this map data in there that I published once already. But I don't think anyone's probably going to have trouble with that right now. We got through the perimeter data. There's an info only about changing styles. I've been incorporating that into the workshop the whole time. The only thing I didn't cover is the base map. So let's do that. There's about 30 base maps, and let's perhaps go with the modern antique map, but we'll do that in 1 second after I explain how I came to create this map. And I saved the story because this was a good time when we're playing with the base map is here. There's all these different options. One option that I really like a lot of the time, but not necessarily all the time, is the imagery, the hybrid imagery map. And the reason for that is that when this fire started, it originated somewhere right around, I don't know if you can see my cursor, right around here. It's down in Pai Valley, this area here. Well, it so happens that I own, let's see, Grizzly Flat Road. Where's the turn? Let's see here. That's Steely Ridge. Okay, so here's the end of Caldor Road. This is my property over here up at the top of the screen. And actually, this fire perimeter data is not entirely complete because my property had about 2 acres burn on it from fire spots that jumped the fire line. And my dad's property is right here, right next to this point. And I was at his house the day that the fire was burning and woke up in the middle of the night, find out we had to get out of there because the fire was about 500 feet from the house. And so and partly on burning on my property. So we split out of there, and I went and I looked up what the fire was doing. And that's how I ended up coming across the Cal Fire database, created my own web map over the course of the night or the next night, and then had a near real-time map that was better than anything else I could find online. I put it up on Facebook. Next thing I knew, in a couple of weeks, about 94,000 people had checked it out. So it kind of just shows the power of that web map and how useful it can be or interesting for people. Why this thing's getting these weird abrasions in there, if you can see that on the Zoom, it's kind of crazy, but the way around that is just to refresh it. Oh, Hey, cancel. I'm going to save my changes, save. And if I refresh now, it should be okay. Good. And it'll come back in. And there it goes. Hopefully. All right. It's kind of a little bit off. Doesn't matter too much. So that was how you could change the base map. And that was the story of why I put this together and figured, well, I might as well reuse this data for a workshop since I already have it all compiled. And I got familiar with it. So let's do this. Let's change the base map for you, though. Instead of hybrid imagery, let's go down to something, I don't know. I like the antique human geography, modern antiques, like about 2/3 of the way down. That's a good one. It just kind of is a muted background, so it doesn't overwhelm your map. It looks nice and clean that way. Good. And then we'll save it one last time. And hopefully there it goes. It finished saving. Next, we want to share the map. This is where if we have the options that we can either have it just shared with ourselves, with our organization, or we can edit, we can share groups, set a sharing group that we can select a group to share it into. That's often particularly useful when you're using it for a mobile data collection app. So if this map was going to go into a mobile data collection application like field maps, that was pertinent, especially at the shared group. But for right now, you can either do or yourself, organization, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just know that that's the option, and I will leave it at. I'll just say just with myself. I don't want to clutter up the organization account. Good. And if I selected another one, it would give me the option to save. After I've done that, then I'd go down and click on Create App. So there's several options. We teach a workshop on story maps that you might be interested in sometime. We'll have that again in the fall. Experience Builder, that's a good one. I like that a lot. Instant App is the kind of the replacement of the old web app builder, web app builder, and it's good. It's just different a little bit. In fact, it's better in my opinion, but it's we'll select that just because it's the easiest. Click on that. And what you'll see is a whole bunch of variety of these. You can preview them, but and just kind of peruse which options are there. There's exhibit, inset. You can see there's a bunch of them here. But for now, let's just go with basic because I don't want to like each one of them they have similarities, but we'll go with the basic one for now. Because I just want to do like a quick and easy map. And in this case, I'm going to make this number 5 because I did 4 earlier, but you can name your map whatever you want. Again, make it something that's what you like the viewer of the map might see on the top of a header. In this case, we can adjust that without that, but on this basic viewer, but just give it an intuitive name. I'm going to leave my tag what it is, and then I'm going to create app. Good. It'll take a second for it to come in. Not very good. So now there's some options here. There's across the top, there's Express is the option that's by default set. I don't like Express, honestly, at all. I always turn that off. I just don't like it. There's not enough reason to have it because without it, it's just as easy. The difference is that you just go down the just go down through the options from top to bottom, and eventually you can revisit some of those options with the get started. The get started one is good, by the way. I'm going to skip that for now. We'll get to it. But so map, we already we have the map that we want. It's already in there. If I click on it, it's going to actually have to drag this down to be able to get out from underneath my Zoom window. So here it just shows the map area, what we have right there. It's kind of redundant. See? But they went from there to Instant App. I'm going to just close this one out here. There's you can select the map or scene. You can get map details, the map area. You can configure that by, and this is handy, click configure. I really like this new option. It takes a second for it to come up, but this is sets your default scale. So what you do is you zoom into the level that you want it and then click it. And then if you zoom out, oh wait, here we go. We got to zoom into the level that we want. I'm sorry. Get it adjusted just right, and then click set on the right-hand side of the screen. And if the frame doesn't look quite right, you could just reset it and then save, and that'll be your default zoom level. I like that option. And that's one that you don't get if you Express is set. There's about, that's something else that's handy. I like to put in a header. So if you click on this, you'll get the option of typing in a new header. So we'll just say Caldor fire burn severity, or Cal. There you go. Call that that could be essentially it will be the name of that map. See how it changed at the top? When we publish that, that'll pop up as well. You can see there's an introduction window if you wanted to have something like that, that'll pop up. We don't want it necessarily, so I'm going to get rid of it. There's the legend is good. So you'll see the legend is actually under this top little hamburger bun stack here. You can have the legend automatically pop up when you open it, but you don't necessarily need that. So, and then you could have some other adjustments here that we don't need to worry about. Going further down, interactivity, you can have your Explorer, your decide if you want to have zoom tools, home button, compass. You can include a compass on here. So all of these different interactive options are available to have them show up. You can modify some of the base toggle. We don't need to worry about most of these. The share, themes and layout. The theme, you can have light or dark. I kind of prefer the light on this case, but it's up to you. Change font types, you name it. One thing that I do like, if I back up then though, is the position manager. Sometimes you'll want to have like your home button maybe on the top right side, and see how it switches over to the top right side of your map, for example. That's just a preference that you might have. You can switch languages. And then lastly, get started. In this, you'll see there's all of these options. We already went through some of them, so we can look at them again if we want to do map area. It gives you information about it, and then you can go to that option if you want it, just like we did before. So that, and well, we've already covered that. If I click on get started again, I could go down and say, oh, search settings, and go to that option. It'll tell you a little bit about it, and then it'll give you some more directions on what to do. But I just happen to know we've already done pretty much the key things that I would want to do on a map. And so once we've got that far, we can go down to the share option and launch. By the way, notice there's also a copy link right here that's available to you. So we can launch, and this will pop up into a new window. And this is what our quick map would look like. So two things, you could just, if it was shared, remember when we did the sharing, I had it shared just to myself, but if I had it shared to everyone, I could take this link and email it to my brother or my coworker, and they could open this up. Likewise, I could go back here and copy the link and then send that URL and it would have this same function that would pop up and go to them. Or I could paste this in Facebook like I did, and where it got caught on and got all the traction when the fire was going on. So that's the simple way of just going through this. It's note that there's some other options in here. There's you can get web analytics, information, and there's other things that like learn more about instant apps. So there's tutorial options that are available there for you as well. Good. So that's one of the two ways I wanted to show you how to create a web app mapping application. Here's another one that is, this one's faster, I would argue, in general, but I'll show you one that's even more powerful in some ways. So across your top, you should still have, you'll have your instant app right here and your map practice, the output that we had. I'm going to go over to the very far left, back to our original web map. So remember, this is our web map. This is where we decided what web mapping application we wanted to select. This is the web mapping application tool, and then this is the final result of that web mapping application. Super simple. Good. Let's go back to the origin though here. Let's create another app, but instead of going with Instant App, let's go with Experience Builder. Okay, so this one is it has more options that you can do, and there's like all these blank web map builder classic. That's what we used to do. Shane mentioned, no, there's ways to get to it. This is a new thing for them. They've added in some of the classic options above here, but what I'll just select for now is just blank full screen. And again, these are all similar. We'll just click create. So this is through Experience Builder. This part is always goofy, and I don't get it why it's like this. You gotta click on this and then drag it, and then drag it, and it never quite drags all the way as far as I want it to. In fact, I'm going to expand this all the way across so you can see. The idea is that you could put headers, but it's like it doesn't quite. You have to wiggle it all the way up to where you want it. It's kind of ridiculous in some ways. There you go, but that's close enough for now. Good. So here we go. That's zoomed wildly out, not what we want. So we can click on the map on the right to zoom it into the correct scale now again. Good. So the initial view is, and you can also modify the custom view over here on the right when you first come in to be maybe one more click in. Good. So that could be the customized default zoom level. Good. So now we have the map on there. This is, like I said, more complex. Something just to note, there's this little explanation or this question mark down the bottom left. And if we click on that, show help guide, and you start tour, this will start a tour of how to go through steps to use this particular template of Experience Builder. Each one of the different templates, like we just click basic, but there's all those other ones that we didn't really look at. They those all have tours available as well that'll give you a sense of like, this is what this is next. This will point out what these things are with a little explanation, and you can just keep on going through some of those, and then we'll skip for now. It's not super detailed, but it gives you a little bit of an orientation. And all of the templates are somewhat simple. The way they work is they have all these widgets or infographics that are available on the far left. The map came in by default, by the way we entered in it, but you can change your base map here. You can add a legend. So say I want to add a legend, I can just click on that, drag it over, and then drop it here somewhere. It doesn't flesh it out automatically. I might change the scale of it, but the source, it doesn't show a source. So we just have to click the current map that it'll show that. So then we have to stretch it to have the features that we wanted included there. If we wanted to add a title, we can go down to scroll down quite a ways down to text and drag that and put it up here somewhere. And then you'll see just like in the other options, the tools for the adjustment tools will all be on the left. So this time I'll say again, Caldor fire severity. And I'll have to highlight the whole thing though, and switch the text to something way bigger, like 30. Probably make it bold too. Good. And then you could practice with character effects and that kind of thing. There's style. So you got the style, the positioning within it. Background, it's blank. I might want it to have a background. Actually, if I do that, then I really notice that I need to center my text. It also, yeah, there's other style options, but you can play with those style options as you wish there. Maybe make it even bigger, like 35, just so it fills it out correctly. And then you can adjust that so you have a title, you got a legend, and you can go through all of these other options here. There's grid, you can play placeholders. Some of them will have options for north arrow. Some of them, it's really hard to find that. I don't remember where it was at. It's you don't really need a north arrow generally though. But you have all those different options available there, and yeah, that's how you'd put together another version of this. And once it's done, it's a little bit different. You have to save it at the top right corner. I save it there, and then I can go to the preview or the drop down, and let's do the preview. There you go. So you can see kind of, I mean, there's a lot of options for creative design. You can move around your legend. Just like if you click on, oops, get my zoom in the way. If you're in your experience builder and you click on the legend again, you'll see the legend option come up. This is where you can adjust some advanced options in there. You can delete some of the legend options from your list, so they're not all over on the map. You might not want to have every option in here. And why I can't zoom down through the thing, I don't know, but yeah, so you can adjust different legend options over here, and this is just it'll just be based on what your preferences are. There's also scale bar somewhere available as well, but I'm not sure where that one is at as well. Again, it depends on which template you're using. Good. With that, once this has been, and we created this preview of it again, and I was kind of sloppy and quick on creating that name there or whatever, the background. It could have made that partly transparent and so forth, made it a little bit prettier and the zoom scale a little bit better. But you can get the idea that those things can be just adjusted easily. And once this is done, I can copy and paste this and send it to someone too, as long as it's been shared publicly to everyone, just like with this other map. So look at the difference. Here's the Insta app version of it, and here is the Caldor Fire app. So it's pretty similar, you can see, just done in two different environments. with that said, we down to the hour. I like to I'm glad I left a little bit of time for any questions or comments, thoughts. How's everybody feeling on this? Now would be a good time to ask away. And with that was everything in the exercise, and actually a little bit extra there at the end.